Our guest on this episode of the podcast is a legend in the offshore fishing community. He has over 60 years of professional fishing experience and has accomplished more in his fishing career than most can dream about. The man has caught thousands of swordfish and tuna and has a garage full of swordfish bills and artwork to prove it. In this episode of the podcast, we sit down with Captain Archie Jost. Archie is an amazing person and an unbelievable fisherman. He's an expert in all methods of offshore fishing for pelagic species, including longlining, greenstick fishing, deep drop fishing, and buoy fishing. In fact, Archie has been hired by NOAA various times to help train and educate fishermen across the United States. Most recently, he was contracted by them to help with their 5-year Deepwater Horizon Fisheries restoration project, and he recently trained U.S Gulf of Mexico commercial fishermen on buoy fishing, greenstick fishing, and deep drop methods. Archie has fished offshore of the entire East Coast and the Gulf of Mexico from Nova Scotia to Florida aboard his own boats, private sport fish programs, and aboard large commercial vessels. He longlined swordfished with Captain Linda Greenlaw aboard the Seahawk and was featured on Discovery Channel's series Swords. Archie is a salt-of-the-earth human and is truly a pleasure to talk to and share a few laughs with. The knowledge, experience, and stories that he has are truly incredible, and he's the type of person you want to be around all of the time. Taylor and I learned a ton from him in this short 2-hour conversation, and we hope you do as well. Without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Captain Archie Jost. Welcome to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast, where we follow 3 words of wisdom. You can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last, you'll just have to keep listening. Stay tight.
Am I coming off or what? Get that down. Don't get on that rock. You two guys been up to?
We got Riley joining us.
Riley the Lab is here.
Who's that?
Riley the Lab is joining us.
Oh, okay.
He's got his little dog bed behind us. He loves these things because he gets to run around outside for a bit, tire himself out, and then pass out during the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's good.
Until my wife gets home and he starts barking.
Yeah. How have you been?
Good.
Good?
Good. Yeah.
The weather looks nice there.
That's beautiful. It really is. It's a gorgeous day. It's windy today, though. Too windy to fish.
Yeah. Where do you live? What
I live
town?
in Stewart.
Stewart, okay.
Florida. Yeah.
Awesome. How long have you lived there?
You can see my little swordfish boat in the back there.
That's awesome.
Do you want
On
to
the lift.
Speaker view?
What do you got, 300 Suzukis on that thing?
3 of them, yeah. 3 300s.
That's
It's a 31 Morgan.
That's awesome.
It was a cabin boat, but made it into a set. It's just for nighttime sword fishing too, but just for sword fishing.
Yeah.
But the only thing I do is daytime. I don't like to go at night. The fellow that I'm in with it on him and his son. His son goes night. He goes daytime with me. So
that's awesome.
plus we use that boat for the training for the Deepwater Horizon project. It was just in Louisiana. Just came back. I actually have a greenstick for it. I don't know if you can see.
Do you really? That actually doesn't
see
surprise me at all.
No.
You see it sticking up in the back.
Oh yeah.
That's a
Fits into
ride.
there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you used the greenstick a lot with it, or did you just
I
get
used it
that?
in Louisiana. I didn't go with it, but they did the training in Louisiana, and they went out to the oil rigs and caught yellowfin at the oil rigs. You know,
That's awesome.
That's sweet. I spent a little bit of time down there, a couple oil spills, and working with those good old boys down there south of I-10.
yeah.
Yeah, bro, I worked for Clean Harbors for how many years? A couple of years?
Yeah, like 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got to see all that. He had some interesting stories. Louisiana party stories.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were fortunate enough to be down there during Mardi Gras my first time there, so that was quite the treat as a college sophomore.
Jesus.
It's been fun.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if you've listened to any of our podcasts, but we generally start off with some rapid fire type questions, kind of get the juices flowing. And usually, we ask people to kind of shoot off the hip and answer however you think you need to. And if it goes down the rabbit hole and we chat for a half hour about something random, that's the whole point. So we ask everybody this question to start, and it's always an interesting answer. Do you have any fishing superstitions?
Actually, I don't at all.
Nothing.
Nothing.
No lucky socks. Bananas don't matter.
No.
Nothing. Did you ever have some when you were younger?
I really never did, but bananas have always been something with people on the boat. So to me, it never made any difference to me really at all.
Yeah.
Nothing ever. I was never superstitious about anything. Just go catch fish. That's it.
Yeah,
That's the way I felt about it. I never people always say, bananas and this isn't not, I think that's all a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
Just focused on the task at hand.
Yeah. If they're there and you got everything right, you're going to catch them.
That's it.
100%. That's great.
Giant bluefin tuna or swordfish?
For thrills, giant bluefin tuna.
Interesting. I didn't expect that at all.
I didn't either.
No. Let me shut her off. That's Alexa telling me to go for a walk.
Is it really? That's amazing.
Keep you on your toes.
She knows it. She knows how to talk to old people. She'll say, "You get up, go for a walk, call a friend."
Well, you're calling a friend, so
yeah,
you're good there.
Checking that box.
So giant bluefin tuna, you enjoy more than swordfish?
I would say because of the fight, because of it's really, I can't really, I can say that, but you can't really say that because when you get a big 400-pound swordfish on, it's altogether different ball game, but it's giant tuna fishing is like, it gets into your blood. So it's like you crave for it, especially I do it alone with my son, Greg. We'll go catch, when you could catch 3 or 4 or 5, we could do it together, just him and I on the boat. And it was always a thrill of doing with it. It's something that we remember all our lives. But I remember this one trip recently, we took Jay from that fishes on Wicked Tuna. We took Jay with us for the first time it was the first swordfish he ever caught. And it was a little over a 400-pounder. And wow. I was thrilled doing that because there was a daytime sword caught on an LP reel. And Jay really, it was his first fish. So he says now I'm the one that taught him how to do it. But Jay's a good guy. He's a funny, I love him,
Yeah.
That's cool. We haven't had the pleasure of meeting him in person yet, but we know each other on the water through the grapevine.
Yeah. He's a good kid. I mean, I did a video for the Deepwater Horizon project last year, and we did it at Cape Canaveral, and we used Mike Hamilton's boat to do it on. And so Jay's in the video. And he does a good job in there too, running the banded reel. But I'll have to send you guys a link to that video so you can watch it.
Yeah,
I haven't been able to put it out public because it was done for NOAA. So, but you probably enjoy it. I'll send you. I did 5 videos for NOAA last year. Actually, 6 of them. It was daytime deep drop, daytime swordfish, daytime buoy swordfish, deep drop, greenstick, and bait rigging.
How did that all come to fruition with NOAA? Did they reach out to you, or did you spearhead the project?
I've been part of the training project for 5 years. For 5 years, I got involved. What happened was when they put the training plan together, it's a project to retrain longline fishermen on alternative gear. What happened was the money that they fined BP, like $90 million for the oil spill, most of that money went to NOAA. That part of that money went to NOAA. And then NOAA has to spend it. So they spend it through National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, who doles the money out. And I got a contract with a company called Cardno out of Tampa. They're a big, huge probably the biggest environmental company in the world. And they contracted me. And how it came about was they asked me to a conference meeting, actually up in LP's conference room in Pompano Beach. And they had about 10 marine scientists there. And they had already been into this program for 2 years. So they got me. So I sat down and I'm sitting amongst, Tim from Linger and Pittman was next to me because he supplies all the gear. He supplied all the gear to the fishermen for the program. So he's sitting next to me and I got these 10 marine environmentalists around us and they start talking about the catch rates on what fish guys caught in their training for the last 3 years prior to this. And they're having a real problem because they scientifically can talk to them, but they can't really, nobody there to teach them how to fish. So they're giving me the numbers and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, they go out on a trip with the greenstick and they come in with like 10 yellowfins. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. In 2014, when I was teaching Matthew up in the Northeast, we had 600. And in 2015, we had 700 in 4 months. A combination of big eyes and yellowfins.
That's insane numbers.
Yeah, we were doing it because I have a system. I sort of invented a system on how to do it to catch more. You can outfish boats by 2 or 3 times. Actually, I taught Mike Hamilton last year, and he had the best year he ever had this past year. But it's just the system that you use that because when you're greensticking, you got to get the gear back in the water fast. And you got to be able to get, instead of 3 fish on, 6 or 7 fish on at the same time. It's a little bit of trick into doing that.
Maximizing bites.
So getting back to the Deepwater Horizon, I'm sitting around this table with all these people that are all highly educated biologists. And they're asking me, and I laughed when they told me the amounts. And then I said, who the hell is really who's doing the training? And they had a couple of guys, and I said, they need to be trained by somebody that knows what they're doing. And this was before COVID. COVID sort of changed everything a little bit as far as, that's why I had to do the videos and the training manuals and all of that kind of stuff, because there couldn't be hands-on training. And then you have to know that there was boats out of Western Florida coast, Texas, and Louisiana. So there was a triangle of 3 boats, and the Louisiana boats were all Vietnamese. So there's a language barrier there where you're talking to. They not only speak Vietnamese, but they have 5 different dialogues of Mandarin to do it.
Oh my gosh!
So kind of hard. So there's a liaison. It's Bobby Wynn, his name is. That is the translator that does all the translating. So we had to actually do the manual both in, I guess you can say the language is Chinese, Vietnamese, but different printing of it.
Dialects, different ways of writing.
Yeah, different dialects. Yeah. So we had to do that. We had to overcome those things once we got going. But I sat there, and these marine biologists are, well, how do you know? How do you know about the currents, and how do you know about where the fish would be, and how do you know? And I said, well, that stuff basically is all pretty simple. it's all spelled out for you. You know, you're a biologist, so you know what the chloroform of the water should be in certain areas, and you have to know the temperatures, and you have to know where the eddy is, and you have to know, you know, when that eddy is going to be at that particular oil well. I mean, you could be 20 miles away fishing, and you're not going to catch nothing because the fish are all by this, where the water's right, where the bait is, you know, where everything comes together. And they're all like, you know, in theory, they know all of this book-wise, but they don't really know how to put it together. You know, when you talk to them about smelling the bait and you talk to them about watching the birds and, you know, all the things that you know naturally. For me, I even with the electronics today, I look at that stuff because that's all the way you fish.
Yeah.
You know, when I was 20 years old, there was no other way to do it. You look for the color of the water and you had to, you know, do it that way.
Instinctual fishing. Back to the original ways.
Yeah. So anyway, they gave me a 5-year contract at that meeting, and then I've been doing it ever since. And this is the last year of the contract. It's over now. We did our training January, February, and now it's just cleaning everything up by the end of another month of that. By June, it's over. Then we do gear inspections, and because all the gear still belongs to NOAA, but they're going to turn it over to the fishermen. So I'm over with it now, but then I was just told that there might be an extension because they found some more money somewhere, so they might want to extend it for another year. So I'll wait and see what happens.
That's a cool opportunity. You must feel like in your glory there, being able to share all your experiences and knowledge with a bunch of, you know,
it's sort of neat. I should have showed you guys. I had that manual with me there.
That was excellent. I took some photos, some strategic photos of that.
Oh, I wish I didn't. Did I actually give it to you?
Oh yeah. We went through it. At the show. It was excellent.
The Deepwater Horizon one. Good. I'm glad you did. Because I was pretty proud of putting that together, you know. And it's funny because you go into the bait room there and where
Tommy and Mark and all those guys.
Yeah, they were doing the bait rigging, and I'm looking at all, you know, this stuff compared to how I do it, and it's all pretty much the same, you know.
That's cool. That's cool. It's probably because you taught all of them how to do it.
I know I taught Tommy.
Yeah. How many fishermen have you put through that training program with NOAA so far? Like by the time June's over, how many total you think?
Well, there's only the boats that are in the program, and it's like 15 boats in the program.
That's cool.
So, and they're all commercial boats. They're all longliners, actually. The idea behind it is to retrain them into fishing alternatively, because I think longline eventually will be limited. You know, other than the Grand Banks. It's still a good fishery, but you know there's just so many regulations.
Yeah, a lot of gear modifications, areas, you know, closures, things like that to contend with.
Have any of the boats had improvements since you've started training them?
Have they what?
Have they?
Oh yeah,
improvements. Yes. Yeah, you've seen. Yeah.
A lot.
Have any of them converted to greenstick fishing or anything like that? Or, you know, change their ways?
A couple of them have converted and really are doing a good job at it. The Vietnamese are a little bit different. They're so they have superstitions. I mean, they only fish they're very, very, you know, like their New Year, they're this and that. I mean, when we were doing the trading, you know, it was superstitious for them to go out on Super Bowl Sunday. Now, can you imagine?
Wow.
I mean, I wouldn't even think that they would watch football.
Wow.
But they wouldn't go out on Super Bowl Sunday. So
that's interesting.
Mike and Mitchell had to sit in the motel room all day, watch, and they're not football people. But.
You want to go to some more of the rapid fires?
Yeah, we're gonna. That was excellent. We're gonna ask a couple more off the hip questions here just to get the.
Oh, I didn't know we started.
No,
It's all good.
We're good. We can
That's
edit.
the whole point of
That's the whole point of it. It's to be as natural as possible. You know.
Yeah.
You're doing good. You're doing good. I promise. Let's see. So, talking about training fishermen and that whole program, Deepwater Horizon, who were some of your mentors that got you into fishing and kind of bring us through the, I guess, Reader's Digest version of how you got started, and we can ask some epic story stuff along the way.
Well, actually, my grandfather was a fisherman who he retired from the laundry business at a very young age, 36 years old. He was a chauffeur for the Vanderbilts on Long Island. He ran their Stanley steamer, and he loved fishing. He got into fishing, and then he built up a laundry business. It was a huge laundry business on Long Island. He had all the Vanderbilt hotels, all the business from them, and he built this laundry that was built out of. He built the steam engine because he learned about steam engines. So he built the steam engine. He built the laundry. Long story short, he retired and went to Florida, built a house in Miami when he was 35 years old, and became a captain, private fishing captain in Miami. And my father loved to fish. If you saw some of those pictures, we actually had a boat in the 50s. We had a 23-foot Chris Craft we used to go in the ocean with, and we had, and that was when I was like 6 years old. And then we had the picture that you saw in my presentation there, that Chris Craft, that was a 32 Express. And that was, so I really got into fishing through family. And then back, I had friends of my father's because my father was so big into it. So Hank Hab and Walter Hab. Walter Hab had a charter boat out of Montauk. And Billy Holzman. I got to meet all of those guys through my father. My father had so many fishing friends too. Like my boys got to meet you guys, the same thing. So it was a matter of just coming up. But my idols back in those days, Walter Hab was one of them. And he was a charter boat captain at Montauk. Jack Wendell's, Billy Holzman. Billy Holzman probably caught more daytime swordfish than anybody in the world ever, and nobody even
back then too.
Yeah, nobody even knows him, and they were all back then. It was, you saw the 400-pound fish, and you put the squid in front of him,
wow,
and you dropped it, and he either shook his tail or went for it, and you'd hook up, or you didn't get him. But most of the time, and the way you looked for them back then was, like I said, back then, even then. When I had my 34 hatters, I didn't have a lot of sophisticated equipment on it. So you would just, you'd be looking, your eyes would be burning from just looking. But as soon as that tide slacked out, and soon as you got close to slack tide, the swordfish back then would breach. They would come out of the water into the air, breach, and flop down. And when they breached, they would come up from the cold water down below, breach out of the water, maybe once or twice. And then you see it every once in a while with basking sharks do it.
Right.
And then they would stay up for the next hour or two. They would stay on top and they would just cruise along, most of the time heading in the northern direction. But that's when you would be looking for them. And then you would make a pass up in front of them. And you'd have a little bucket in the back of the boat with, and Ellie Brown taught me. I mean, I learned a lot of this from really, really good guys that knew how to do it. But Billy was the best. And a fellow by the name of Joey Moore, who was a younger guy then, he became a big captain in Florida as well. But all of those guys, we used to always do it. So you'd have a bucket with your line dropped in the bucket, and then your rod set up on strike, but you'd put about, 20 yards of line in that bucket. And then you'd take the bait, you'd let the bait out, put some line in that bucket. And then you'd run up on the top and you'd hold it in your hand and you'd make a pass up. You want to get the bait to the fish before the wake would get to the fish. So it would, so you had to get it way back, hold it up high, and make that pass. And soon as you saw his tail make a little shake to his tail, you let go of it, right? So, and that means he was going for it and he was hitting it. So you let go of it, and that line that's in the bucket comes out, and then the rod's on strike. So he's already swallowed the damn thing.
Right. So the bucket's your drop back then. The bucket line.
Yeah, the bucket's your drop back. Because a lot of times you did this with just one or two people on the boat. You didn't have, it was just a little bit different way of doing it. Because on the swordfish, there was not like a tuna where he's going to hit it like that. The swordfish a lot of times will play with it first. So you want to give him enough time. You don't want to pull it away from him either. Yeah. And you stop the boat. As soon as you let go of it, you stop the boat.
Gotcha.
And that is like that fishing there, when you talked about the difference of bluefin, and that's the most exciting fishing for swordfish that way. You don't do that anymore. Today is a little bit different. You take your LP, your daytime fishing, drop it down 1,700, 1,800 feet of water, and you wait for the thing to tip, to bounce a little bit, and you got the fish on, and you don't get a fight with the fish until he gets to 700 feet. Because here, he don't fight until he gets up to the bottom line of the fast current in the Gulf Stream, because way down below, it's not really moving as fast as it is on the top. A lot of people don't realize that the Gulf Stream moves at 6 knots or 5 knots for about 700 feet, and then it slows down the deeper you get. But then once that fish gets to 700 feet, then you got a good fight on your hands.
Yeah. What's the biggest fish you've seen doing that drop back method
on the surface?
Oh, back in those days, they could be anywhere up to 600-700 pounds.
Jesus,
that's insane.
I mean, you look at some of the harpoon pictures back then; they were always big fish.
Yeah,
I saw a fish come in 600 pounds. The guys would catch by mistake at a shark tournament.
That's wild.
Swordfish, because they'll eat anything if they're hungry. They'll come up with chum slick too,
What's been your longest fight with a sword? Rod and reel fight, I should say. I know you have plenty of long line experience of rod and reel fight.
They don't last more than 45 minutes to an hour, usually.
Yeah.
I always put a lot of pressure on them, like you do with giant tuna, because I always felt if you got them hooked good, I'd rather lose them right away than screw around with the fish with light drag and whatnot. So I fished them just like a giant tuna.
Like 40 pounds, strike at 40 pounds sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
At least 30 pounds, could be 40, but at least 30 pounds, which was different than trolling like up in Canada for the tuna. That was altogether different.
Yeah. That man drag up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
70 pounds of drag. And then as soon as the fish hits, you backed off on it.
Yeah. That's crazy. What's your favorite daytime sword bait and favorite nighttime sword bait? Do you have a preference in type of bait and how it's rigged?
My favorite nighttime bait is blue runners.
Wow, I didn't expect that.
At night. I like live blue runners at night. Squid is always a good one, but I like live blue runners, and I always have a pair of sharp scissors, and I snip a little bit off of the tail on each side, and then I'll take one of the pet fins on the side, and I'll snip one off so we can only go around in circles. Because usually, swordfish are a little lazy, but they'll eat them. If you can't have a bait that'll get too far away. Yeah, they're not as aggressive. They're not as aggressive as a bluefin. Bluefin just murders it. But a swordfish, he plays around with it a little bit.
You think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're on the bottom a lot and colder water temperature and what they feed on moving slower and like having a slower approach down deep? Or do you just think it's
Well, they are pretty lethargic. because of the cold. There's no question about that. That's why when we like the daytime deep drop buoy fishing, you get the fish up a lot easier and quicker because of that. And once they get up, if you can get them up, like with that gear, you get them up pretty fast, and you put a lot of pressure on them to get them up. And once you get them up, and at that point you harpoon them, and you got the fish. They don't even hardly wake up yet, And when you pull them in the boat and you clean them, the inside of the fish is ice cold.
Wow.
I show you that in one of those videos. So the quality of fish is phenomenal on the daytime deep drop buoy fish. They're worth much more money because it's such a good quality fish. But the hookup and everything is pretty much the same. But yeah, they are, when they're cold like that, they're much different fish. If you're fighting them on a rod and reel and you're screwing around with them, once they warm up in that 700 feet, as they're coming up into 2 or 3 or 200 feet or 300 feet, they really wake up. And if you don't get them right away, they start fighting. They'll go right back down to 1,500 feet.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through a little bit of buoy fishing for people that are listening, even us? I mean, we know, I guess the bulk of what it is and how people do it, but can you kind of just like run us through like how many are you fishing, things like that, how to buoy fish and how guys are doing it?
Well, it's a learning curve, and it's the daytime buoy fishing. You can fish. They use tracking devices, but you can fish like maybe 8 or 9 buoys successfully with one boat. You can't fish many more than that because a lot of times if you get 1 or 2 fish on, especially big ones, it may take a lot of time, and it's hard to keep track of your gear. On this boat, they use the Garmin tracking devices on them, which work pretty good. They have maybe a 8 or a 9 or a 10 mile radius, so you can keep track of your buoys pretty good. But you can't really fish much more than that because of the movement. I up north, I would think that you could, because you have very slow currents in the canyons up there, so you could probably fish 15 or 20 buoys there. But it's a lot of work because you can only, if you have a buoy permit, you can only do it by hand. So you have to have a special hand reel to do it with. So it's basically a banded reel with a little gearbox on it and a hand crank. Because in the buoy fishing, unless you have, like for the program, we had EFPs that were exempt, so we could use electric or hydraulic for the program, and the program boats could use it because it was really mostly for research and training. And the commercial boats can use it that had those EFPs in the Gulf. Other than that, you have to do it by hand. But we devised and came up with a banded reel with a hand crank on it that enables you to get like 10 foot to one turn almost. So it doesn't take that long to bring it in. But it's really designed for the young guys. You got to be young and strong to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's not so bad once you get all your gear in the water. It's bad when you got to pick everything up when you're all finished. Yeah. Because it's a constant winding. And, if you're fishing 1,500 feet on every one of those leaders, that's a lot to get in, But you catch better quality fish and bigger fish during the day than you do at night.
That's interesting.
Do you think those bigger fish just don't come off the bottom, or don't come off the bottom third?
Well, they do, but I think they're more apt to be feeding the baits on the bottom. So they're more apt to be down in the bait. North of Florida here, you get mostly squid, big squid too, but they're mostly in the bait. So they're not going to come up, at night. A lot of them come up and they feed on red shrimp like about 150 to 160 feet below the surface, you'll see the thermocline, and that thermocline is full of all kinds of bait fish, grill, and plankton, and the red shrimp come up and they feed on the plankton and the grill, and so the swordfish will come up and feed on the red shrimp, and they'll feed on a lot of red shrimp. That's why you hear about these pumpkin swordfish,
Right?
and that's how they get that pumpkin look, just because they eat a lot of the red shrimp.
That orange meat
The red
color.
shrimp are big. If you ever ate red shrimp, they're delicious. Get them out of Port. There's a couple of boats that do them out of Port Canaveral.
That's cool.
I've never seen one.
I've never had one.
No.
I've heard all about them. I've heard. I mean, we've got like light orange down in Florida, not like quite pumpkin meat, but I've heard of the shrimp eating swordfish.
Yeah.
Back to the buoys, just to kind of paint a picture for the listeners. So you got the boat, you're going out offshore at night. Say you're fishing 10 buoys. So each buoy has its own
nighttime buoy fishing is totally different. Nighttime buoy fishing, you can fish 35 buoys at night. You're allowed to fish up to 35 buoys. So that's altogether different. Can you give me a second? I can show you something. I'll go grab it and show it to you.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, because you'll understand it better if I could actually show you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. Absolutely. Grab it. Out to the boat he goes.
The man, the mystery, the legend.
Oh, he's just unbelievable.
The fact that he's got a stick on that boat in the background is amazing.
It really is. The amount of large offshore animals that he's seen in his life.
Like, I didn't even know a question to ask because there's just too many questions. I do want to get into the some of these tuna stories.
I do too. Once he grabs the his little show and tell buoy fishing example here, we should go into bluefin stuff.
This is the bill from a 600-pounder that we got last week. Look how big that is.
It's like a 2x4.
Huh?
It looks like a 2x4.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Huge fish.
You got that last week? Is that what he said?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's 3 weeks ago.
Does your wife allow that in the house?
No, I put it back outside. So these are Cuban yo-yos. Can you see it?
You're showing up kind of dark for some reason.
Move your body a little closer to the camera, and then it'll refocus on you here. There we go. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So this is a Cuban yo-yo.
Okay.
Yo-yo.
Got it.
Got a clip on one side, and it's got your hook.
Yep.
So nighttime you use a lot of squid. Nighttime you use squid because the squid come up in that same area because they feed on all the same stuff the shrimp do. So you have 35 of these, and this is the right amount of leader that's on there. So you bait it, put your light on it, throw it out, and just you're going along with the boat. I'll send you the video on how you do this.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
When we get done, I'll send you all the videos.
Yeah, that would be great.
And you'll see how Mitchell holds it, and it shoots right out of his hand off the side of the boat, and he clips the buoy on it and throws it in the water.
And what depth are you running your baits at and things like
160 feet.
160 feet. So he flips the bait over. I know we'll see the video, but he flips the bait over the side. It pays out off the yo-yo. He clips the buoy on. The buoy has tracker, some sort of light, I'm assuming, on the buoy as well.
The night buoys has strobe lights, no trackers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Just strobe lights.
How long are they soaking for typically? Like through a tide change or?
No, you start fishing right away. So you put out 35 buoys. You never stop the whole night. So you put out 35 buoys, and then as soon as you put them out, you just go right down all the buoys to the other end, to the, let's say, the east end. You just go down and look at all the buoys. You get to the east end, you stop there for a few minutes, and you come all the way back to the west end again. You stop there for a few minutes, you go all the way back. And as you're going by, you'll see all your buoys are in a straight line. They're about 1,000 to 1,500 feet apart, maybe 2,000 feet apart. And you'll see one that gets a fish on it. If it's a big fish, it'll be going south. So you'll see the buoy moving. It just gets pulled through the water. So you grab that, bring that fish in, rebait it, and put it back in again.
Yeah.
Go along and just keep right on going. Reset that one, you just keep right on going. And you just pick fish all night long.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
On the daytime setups, I know it's different, but instead of hand lining that whatever 160 feet that you just showed us on the yo-yo, you're then attaching it to that bandit and then fighting off the bandit because you have much more line out during the daytime.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got
on
it.
the handrail bandit. Yep.
Got it.
Seems like a lot of work.
That's wild.
Wow.
Imagine.
Yeah, but the thing about it is one of the things you have to realize is that when a fish gets hooked, his natural instinct is to come to the surface.
True,
and try
yeah.
and shake it off. So you're really reeling in by hand, mostly the weight and the slack, because that fish is swimming up. It's only when he realizes, when he gets up higher and he realizes that he's trying to get rid of it, then the fight really starts. And it's usually from 700 feet up is where they get a little crazy. Or once you get the weight off, too. So now you're fighting them directly.
Right.
Because a lot of times that fish is fighting a 10-pound weight or a 12-pound weight.
You got a big V in the line as he's coming up, and you're clearing that.
Yeah, that's what you're doing. Yep. So you really don't even feel the fish until after that weight's off, or a lot of times before it. If it's a big fish, when he gets to that 700 or 800 feet, he gets up to 300 and he says, "I don't like this. I'm going to go back down," and he goes back down.
Yeah.
I have
the boys had one on. They said the fish they think he was over 800 pounds, and they had him to the surface. They ran the boat up on him and they harpooned him. He took off, went back down. The leader came under the boat and broke off, so they only had him on the harpoon. And they used 3 baskets of harpoon line, 1,600 feet of harpoon line. And they put dobs on it, but they should have put more dobs on it as it was going down instead of when it got down.
Yeah.
Because then the fish was already on the bottom and there was no way to fight him. And they were fooling around with this fish, and they had four more fish on other buoys. They could see them in the buoys. So they grabbed it, and then when they darted him, it went through his dorsal fin.
Oh, no.
It didn't even go into the fish. So they had him by the dorsal fin. So the 3 guys, it broke their hearts to do it, but they ripped the dart out of the dorsal fin and they went back to the other gear.
Oh,
yikes.
man.
But it was a huge fish.
Yeah.
Mitchell said it was one of the biggest ones he's ever seen. So,
what's one of your most epic commercial days buoy fishing? Maybe you don't even want to say it.
no, a day like any, they're all good days. I mean, if you get, 6 or 7 fish, I think in the video there we had 11 fish that day. But it's just a great day.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen because a lot of people think that the buoy fishing is you can't do, like, they haven't been out now in probably 2 weeks because you have to have all the conditions have to be just right. And that doesn't always happen. So buoy fishing doesn't happen every single day. It doesn't happen. If you can get out and actually get 4 or 5 days a month, that's about what you're going to get.
Sounds like harpooning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the conditions have to be perfect. You can't have, like, you go out, if you went out today, I don't know what the tide is today, but the last time they went out, they didn't do well at all. It was right after the full moon, and the tide was 6.5 knots out there, and you can't fish that. And they were ending up all the way at Cape Canaveral, which is 90 miles away to the north. And things don't fish right when the current runs that hard, you know.
Yeah.
So you have to have all those things working in your favor. So it isn't like as lucrative as you might think it is. If you do get a good day you could have a $10,000 or $15,000 day, maybe once a month.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
So it's not what you think it is, you know. And nighttime fishing, I mean, you could have a really good night where you could get 22, 23. Mitchell's already had 28 fish in one night.
Wow.
And they were all like 80, 60 to 120 pound fish, mostly. Night fish are usually smaller. Occasionally you'll get one big one, but you can have, and that doesn't happen that often either. You might get one of those a month, one or two a month, you know?
Mm. Now, have you tried the deep dropping buoy fishing at night? Or deep dropping at night, I should just say, as a general question.
I've tried, yes. Matter of fact, that fish I can't say it. It's night. The sun had already just went down. So we hooked him after sundown. That fish that we caught with Greg and Jay on the boat, was right when the sun was already down. It was maybe a half hour after the sun was down. We hooked that fish. So yeah, you'll hook them at night. You know, you can fish deep drop at night too. There's no reason why you shouldn't. You know, it just depends. If the bait's there, the fish will be there. It's like that's why they're doing so well catching big eyes daytime, because the bigger big eyes are down on the bottom.
Yeah.
So if you find the pilot whales are primarily their number one feed is squid. So if you find a pot of pilot whales and they're up laying around, usually if there's big eyes with them, they'll be up laying around with them. So they come up at that slack tide time also. They come up to rest, but not to feed. They're feeding down really down deep on the bottom. So the pilot whales, when they're feeding, and if you're in that area, if you're deep dropping, you're going to catch big eyes in the squid on the bottom. If you're in an area where there's a bunch of pilot whales. Because the pilot whales are going to tell you that they're feeding. If they're hanging there for like 1 or 2 or 3 days, and they're feeding all day long on those squid, and they come up at slack tide, just the opposite to rest.
Yeah,
you know, they hang out, they talk to each other, they bump noses, and whatever they do. You know,
which is interesting because I mean, for bluefin, it seems like that's the feeding time is slack tide. Or,
yes,
right around it.
Yes, because what happens at slack tide is that the bait comes up.
Yep.
Everything comes up. You know, like if you, one of the things that I was involved in a organization called the Okinawa Ocean Research Foundation, and if you Google that, it still comes up with me as the president. But it was the foundation that was responsible for all the marine life in New York. So every whale, every turtle, every sea turtle, every dolphin, everything that washed up on the beach, everything that had problems with, I was part of that for about 17 years of my life. I was also commercial fishing and fishing. And I always believed that, you know, being a part of that was helping me put back, you know, or help, you know, the environment with marine mammals and whatnot. So I was involved in a lot of things, but because of that, I learned all the feeding habits of all of those marine mammals. And when you learn the feeding habits of them, it makes fishing a lot easier, you know, because you're going to know where the bait is. and you didn't know those times. But I also used to spot. I spot for a lot of the guys that they came from the Cape and Maine. They would come in June to Montauk, early June, and I had a plane that I spotted. I spotted for a bunch of different guys, Lexi Krause and Kevin Scholar and his father. They were at a Green Harbor.
Yeah, we know Kevin.
I used to spot for a lot of those guys when they were harpooning. So and I did a lot of. My son Jeff actually learned how to fly. We had a 172 that I used for spotting, but he learned how to fly because we used to do Kemp Wrigley sea turtle tracking with devices on them. Back then we had an antenna on the plane, and Jeff would take marine biologists up and they would be tracking all these turtles that we rehabbed and put back in the water. So you got to see all of that stuff, which was really interesting. So even up in when I was doing spotting up on the Cape, you'd see just at slack tide, bang, the sand eels would come up, the whales would come up, start bubble feeding in them, and the tuna would be right around them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you get all of that. That's all like part of the way everything, I see it right in my backyard here, the way the dolphin come in and feed at slack tide right here,
So crazy.
So important. I feel like it's such an important part of fishing that gets overlooked nowadays because people want that like instant gratification bite. Like they're not willing to put in the study time and, the time on the water and all of those things to, paint the picture like you have, Yeah,
it's true. I mean, there's so many things that I've seen and done and the experiences that I had that it's hard to explain to people, One of the reasons why I started doing scrimshore on swordfish bills was that I was out many years ago and scrimshore is pretty neat. It's the oldest form of photography in the world. I call it photography because it was before photography. So way back in the early 1800s or even the 1700s, a whaler would be on, let's say a whaler would be see Nantucket for the first time. But I'm even more like the old whalers that would actually be in foreign countries or in the Orient whaling. And they would see landscape. But I use Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard because Nantucket Harbor with the houses and everything in the harbor, you see that a lot on scrimshore if you go to Nantucket. Well, the reason why that is because the artist, he wasn't an artist. A scrimshore was the most primitive. All you have to be able to do to scrimshore is do stick people, draw stick people. Once you do that, you can figure out how to, you can draw. So what they would do is they'd be sailing, they'd be on a boat, an old whaling ship, anchored in the harbor, and the guy would be looking at the landscape, Nantucket Harbor, and he's going back to wherever he came from. And he was like, what a beautiful place. I'd love to be able to show this to my family. So he started doing scrimshore with these whale bones and whale teeth and things like that, so he could bring them home and show his family, this is where I was. It was his pictures.
Interesting.
That's so cool.
It is. It's really neat. So one day, I was in one of my Makos, so I had to be maybe 25 years old, 24, 25 years old. And I was out of Mauritius Inlet, and it was a flat, calm day. I was trolling for white marlin. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there was about a 400-pound giant bluefin on top of the water going in little circles like this, tight circles. I mean, like his head was almost pivoting around. His tail was flapping like crazy like this, right on top of the water. And I started heading over to him. I said, holy shit, we could gaff him. So I get maybe about 75 or 80 feet from them. And out of the water comes an orca. Comes out of the water, grabs the whole 400-pound tuna in his mouth.
Oh my God.
Up in the air and right down into the water again, and it flattened right out and was all over.
Holy shit.
What did I just say? So this killer whale just ate the 400-pound tuna. And what had happened was he must have hit the tuna and stunned him.
And that's what you saw
down
first.
below.
Yeah.
And that's why we saw him on top.
Yeah.
And then he came up and ate it. Well, there was no way to ever take a picture of that. So I was in my mind for a lot of years. And then when I learned how to scrimshore, I did it on a scrimshore.
That's amazing.
Because you could never get a picture of it. So I actually duplicated it on a scrimshore, you know.
What did you scrimshaw it on? A swordfish bill?
Swordfish bills, yeah.
That's
cool.
amazing.
I did a beautiful one for Tommy. I like Tommy. I like his family, his mother and father, his two brothers, Steve. I like them because they remind me a lot of me fishing with my family. When we were all young, my wife would come. I'd take the three kids. We'd go white marlin fishing all the time in my Hatteras. I had an old 34 Hatteras way back, and we would go out as a family and everything. And I just used to love them here in Stewart or fishing. They fished as a family, you know, just the five of them, you know. And I had taught them how to. They used to come over and sit out on my patio here and bring a couple of 6-packs of beers, and we would just sit around my patio table here and bullshit about fishing, you know.
That's great.
And I was teaching. They were always picking my brains, these kids, but I would love to tell them, you know. So, but I was teaching them I taught them how to basically do the eels, and then they went back out and they started catching more of the bigger fish with the eels on the daytime here. So the father brought me a swordfish bill. It was one that was sort of cut off a little bit, broken off. And he said, I wanted to do something with this to surprise the boys, you know. So I did scrimshore on it for him. This was like 2 Christmases ago. I think I gave it to him 2 Christmases ago. It took me a year to do it almost because I only had time to work on it when I could. So I did it, and it was a family. It had the Tokatomish on the top, the boat, and it had the hooked up with the swordfish, and then it had a picture of the swordfish on the dock over at Sailfish Point with the family standing behind it, holding it up. And then on the end of it, I did an eel, which was really neat. I did a big double hooked eel on the very point of it.
That's cool.
You know, because it was what I taught him, you know.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
When I gave it to the father was like, this is like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. You know, he wanted to give me something to do it. I said, no, I can't take any money. I've probably done 400 swordfish bills for people over the years. I've been doing it since 92. And I've probably given away so many to friends. And to me, it's an enjoyment of doing it and giving it to somebody, you know, more than like that one out there I'm going to do for Mitchell, you know, because that's the biggest fish he ever caught himself personally.
So cool. Being able to help immortalize something, a catch like that for somebody is a special thing. We have it's kind of the same feeling for us doing the tuna tales for everybody is, you know, you get to see the smile on their face. You get to hear the story. And
you should do the bills too.
I know. Yeah. We just started getting a few from different people. We did a sailfish bill, and we have some swordfish bills and stuff coming through.
I could send you a half a dozen or a dozen bills. I still probably have 600 in my garage. I had
600?
600, 3 digits.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And I get them every day. I mean, I get them every time the guys go out. I get them, and I have a trap out there soaking now that's ready to come out of the water. There's probably 15 in that one. And then and people bring them to me to do it for them, to prep them is the hardest job is prepping them.
So what are some of the key tips for prepping if people want to have them finished?
Well, what you have to do is you have to put them in the water in a trap. I mean, I could actually show you all of that. But if you guys ever come down here, I'll show you how to do it. So you put them in a trap so the sea life, all the little sea life that's in the water, they eat everything out of them, and the oil comes out of them. So you got to get them to that point. And then you dry them out. You pressure wash them lightly, not too hard, to get all of whatever's left on them. And then you put them either in the sun. I don't like bleaching them. I bleach some of them. It makes them whiter. There's some guys that use hydrogen. They use peroxide as a special grade of peroxide. You buy it by the gallon. It's pretty expensive, but a lot of guys do that. That makes it really white, you know. But that's pretty much it. But once it's eaten out and you dry it off and let it dry out, you can do your kind of work on it with no problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I love some of the stuff that you do. You should definitely do swordfish bills.
Yeah, we
mounted standing up.
That'd be great, wouldn't it? On the plaques and stuff. And yeah, it'd be cool.
We'll probably we'll have you send some up. We'll experiment on them, do different finishes.
Text me your a shipping address for you, and I'll send you a bunch.
Yeah,
they're not huge ones. But they're they're a lot of the ones I had. I still have some from when I did the sword life on the line trip, but I sold a bunch of them. Believe it or not, I sold about 200 of them Christmas time for $10 a piece.
Wow,
maybe even more than that, because I had to get out of my storage unit. I had a storage unit with all that stuff, but I had to get out. I walked out of my garage and show you the boxes that I got up out there. Was like, I just straightened a lot of that stuff out yesterday.
I think last time Slick was down there, he posted a little video walking through your garage or somewhere, and there was just 55-gallon drums full of swordfish bills.
It's wild.
I gave Slick a half a dozen, and Bobby, the other kid that fishes too, I gave him a half a dozen, and then Slick started doing some scrimp draw. I was teaching him how. Yeah. I waxed up a couple for him, and he's starting to learn how to do it.
It's awesome. We actually just we just had a podcast with Slick and Mike Murphy last week. It was a blast. We had a few beers and told a bunch of stories. It was fun time. Yeah. And I think I've actually seen Tommy Howd's bill that you scrim shot. I think he posted it when he got it, and I remember seeing the artwork.
A lot of people probably didn't realize that I did it, but yeah.
It's cool.
I enjoyed doing it, for them.
This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Satfish, Satellite Fishing Technology. If you've been fishing for any length of time, especially offshore, you should understand how important preparedness is to a successful day on the water or multiple days on the water. Satfish combines the latest high-definition satellite images and maps with advanced planning tools to make it easy to find the most productive offshore fishing grounds. Head straight to the bite zone instead of wasting time and fuel searching through lifeless water. You can visit satfish.com to check it out. Use the promo code SEARS22 for $20 off your first year, and that includes a free 30-day trial. Give it a look if you're a canyon fisherman. Sea surface temperatures, chlorophyll, bathymetry, it's all on there. Great resource, great dashboard, easy to use, very intuitive. Check it out, satfish.com. So tell us, so on the track of fishing as a family, obviously we fish together as a family. We're fortunate enough to do the same growing up, and talking about Tommy and these other people. So tell us a little bit more about fishing with your sons, and kind of fast forwarding through sword fishing and learning that into like your George's Bank times and running the Midnight Sun and all that sort of thing.
Well, George's Bank was the most fun that I had ever fishing with my son, Greg, because he wanted to do it. I was living here in Florida, and I really didn't want to. I had just finished up Swords Life on the Line season 2. Season 1, on our way home, was season 1. On our way home on the Seahawk, we were heading into the Cape Cod Canal, and just prior to that, when we were off of Cape Cod coming in from the Grand Banks, I had the radio on 10, and I heard all the guys, they were by the figs, and it was an epic giant tuna bite in 2007. Epic. I mean, everybody was there. Everybody was catching fish. They were all big fish. I don't know if you guys remember that.
I remember seeing pictures of 900-pound cores coming in. Off the
it was
figs
like
that year.
unbelievable. And I knew everybody that was there doing it too, and I was on this swordfish boat coming home pretty tired. But anyway, we got in from that. And the next year, it was good again. And then that end of that year, some of the first fish were brought in from Georgia. So I think it was like 2009. Well, my son, Greg, he's been giant tuna fishing with me off of Montauk since he was like 9 years old. I have pictures with him when his first 400-pound fish, he was only about 10 or 11. So he got in his mind that, I want to go to George's Bank. So he bought it was sort of a neat boat. It was a 40-foot Young Brothers that he found on Long Island that had a 1271 in it, big old 1271. It was a 500 horsepower engine, but the thing was as big as my kitchen table. It was huge, huge engine, Detroit, with 2 stacks in the back, 2 double stacks that went up in the back, a loud thing. Well, he bought that boat, and so I made some trips up there and I helped them rewire the whole boat. We got it all ready. We put electronics on it. We got it all set. He's like, we're going to George's Bank. We're going to George's Bank. I said, okay, Greg, we're going to George's Bank, whatever you want to do. So we get right near the end of it. And guys are calling me now because a lot of my friends are out there. They're calling me, you got to get out here. You got to get out. Yeah, we still have to build a box to fish, to put on that. And I had a hot tub business that I turned over to my kids, to my daughter and son, Greg and Andrea, when I moved to Florida in 95. So they had tons of hot tubs all over the place, used ones, but they come back because it was a new hot tub business, but they had all the used ones. So I said, Greg, why don't we just tear that hot tub over there, throw it on the back deck, bolt it down, and let's go fishing. We can put 2 fish in that and we'll put 1 in a bag because you were allowed 3. He goes, yeah, let's do that. So we took it and I took the back of the equipment out of it, ripped everything out of it. And the back where the equipment used to be in the hot tub, that was our refrigerator because the boat didn't have a refrigerator. So, and then what I did was we put a cage because the exhaust pipes were dangerous and it had 2 big mufflers out there and they weren't covered. So we had a cage made, and then I put a door in the cage with a little shelf in between the 2 mufflers. I said, that's our oven. We can cook in there.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So we get the thing. We go out to George's Bank. I mean, we get our 3 fish. We come back. We'll go out 3 fish, come back in. It was like the most fun we ever had. We laughed, just the 2 of us. We were laughing all the way out there and all the way back. And it was just like you catch them just feeding like in a fish tank, like you see on a lot of the videos,
Yeah.
So you guys heard of Donnie Braddock, right?
Yes.
So Donnie's an old tuna fisherman. So Donnie comes with us this one trip. He jumps on with me and Greg. And the boat's a little primitive. So we get out there and
you're cooking on the exhaust. So
Yeah.
you're at a primitive level right there.
Well, yeah, that was it. So we catch our 3 fish. The 3 of us are exhausted because we caught it pretty fast, and we're laughing and everything, and we're exhausted because we fish day and night right through the night because they used to call Greg and I the vampires because we like to fish at night more than the daytime. Because if you go around at night and mark them, you can catch them, And you spend your time moving around at night. I mean, they feed 24 hours a day. They're pigs. So, I mean, to me, guys are all sleeping and they're all laying there. We move around until we find a bait. Sometimes you find a bait just all over the place on top and everything. So anyway, we get back in there and Donnie's sitting and I put hot dogs and beans on the thing. And Donnie's sitting on the engine box and he's like, when's dinner going to be ready? So I said, well, at 1,500 RPMs, it's going to take about 35 or 40 minutes before everything's hot, So he yells over to Greg. He says, "Hey, Greg, can you kick it up a little bit so we can eat a little quicker? Kick it up a couple of RPMs so the food will get cooked quicker."
That's hilarious.
But yeah, I love that fishing. And then we said, "Oh, we got caught in some really bad weather with the Young Brothers. It was a great boat, but every once in a while it would have one of those things where it would knock you off your feet. You know, it's got that little sharp,
little extra snap.
Yeah. So we saw the Dixon up for sale. We said, "Oh, we got to have that." You know, it was a 45-foot lobster boat. You know, a little bit faster, a little bit better, a little bit bigger.
Where'd you find that hull?
We found it. Actually, we found it in Montauk. It was a lobster boat out of Jones Inlet or Rockaway Inlet, and it had been fishing. He had just bought a new steel boat. He bought a steel boat from a friend of mine, Vinny Jr., and Vinny took that in trade, so he added his dock. So we said to Vinny, we want to buy it. So we ended up buying it from Vinny and hauled it out right there and redid everything. I redid the whole thing. You know, converted it into into the tuna boat. You should see it now. I mean, I did you see the pictures of it? Did I show you the pictures of it now?
I don't know. We saw it since you sold it.
No, I mean, the last time I've seen it is definitely the whole Peaked Hill Bluefish thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's now a squid light boat in the West Coast.
Wow.
So it's all decked out with the boat. The guy redid the boat again. It's absolutely gorgeous. And all he does is he goes out and he lights up. And you'll see Greg's got video of like millions of squid around it. He'll light up the squid. The squid will come up to the lights, and then a boat will come in and net the squid around the.
Oh wow! Really?
Yeah. So they get paid just to bring the squid up, and the squid boats they get the squid.
That's cool. That's really cool.
You mentioned a little bit of like some nasty weather and snapping back and forth. What's the scariest weather that you've been in?
I would say there was one time I was fishing with my boat, the Sea Hunter, which was that 45-foot center console I had that I had built. I was fishing in the Hudson Canyon, and there was this really bad northwest wind storm that was coming. It was really, really, and there was a boat in front of me called the Miss that was out there fishing with me, the Miss Barnegat Light out of Barnegat Light, New Jersey. And he had gotten a report, and we were actually, it was just me and John on the boat. We were actually, we had a bunch of nice big eyes. We had a good catch on the boat. And the storm was coming, and I was thinking it would be closer to go into Jersey than it would be from where I was. I was on the west side of the Hudson, than it would be to go back to Shinnecock. And if a storm was coming, I'd never be able to get into Shinnecock, so I'd have to go to Montauk, and it was a lot longer to do that. So I said, I'll just, so the Miss Barnegat Light took off, and I didn't realize the boat was like close to a 30-knot, 110-foot catamaran.
Wow.
And plus I couldn't, my cruising speed was 17 knots. So I took off. I stayed maybe an hour later than when he took off, and I shouldn't have. I should have left right when he did. But anyway, this storm came up, and I'll tell you what, they were the worst seas I ever saw. I mean, it was like incredible. And it's funny, but I flew a lot, and I've been in a lot of bad seas with the boat, and with boats that I've had, and on other boats, we were in some really bad weather on the Grand Banks. Really bad weather on the Grand Banks. One night was 120 mile an hour winds but only for an hour. But it was rough.
Wow.
But when I went, the power of the ocean, these waves, were out of the northwest, so I was dead into them. And you'd climb up a wave, and you were really climbing up a wave. And when you got to the top of it, you'd come down and come up the next one. And about every fifth wave was the bad one, it was the tallest. And I just dealt with it. I knew I had like 20 miles to go to get to the inlet, but I couldn't go any more than a knot and a half. That's all I could do.
God.
So because I was going, and these waves were actually, they were, when I say 25 foot, they were 20 to 25 foot, which is like the height of a telephone pole.
Yeah.
They were a long ways up. And then the wind was curling the water off the top of. So as you'd come up, you'd have that extra curling off the water. So it would roll right onto the boat, onto the bow of the boat. Well, I had built that boat, and it's a good thing we built it as strong as we did. But because we had built the deck and everything on it. So I was in that storm for 17 hours by the time I got in. And
so how many miles for 17 hours?
20 miles.
20 miles for 17 hours?
Yeah.
That's like going from southeast corner to Situate.
Oh,
17
my
hours.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Now, the other thing about it was at one point, and then this was like, let's say 5 o'clock before it was dark. At one point, I said, I might be better off trying to go side to and maybe try and make Atlantic City. And back then, I was never in Barnegat Light. So, I'd been in Atlantic City, and I said, Atlantic City would be a good shot in, I know it, but I'd never been in Barnegat Light. So I turned to go to heading towards Atlantic City. And it was, that scared the shit out of me a little bit, because now the way they were rolling this way and I was going up it this way, I said, screw that. I'm going back to Barnegat Light.
Oh my
but
God.
it was straight head into it. So I'll deal with it, And now Lenny was the captain. He's still the captain on the Miss Barnegat Light today. I became really, really close and friendly with all of them in there after that trip. Everybody got to know me. And then season 2 of Swords Life on the Line, we left out of Barnegat Light. So I got all my old friends that I knew from back when this happened in the 90s. It was 93 when it happened. So it was right after the storm of the century was 91. Perfect Storm was 91. And this was like, they called this like storm of the century or something like that. It was like 93. Well, anyway, Lenny had the sideband on the Miss Barnegat Light, and he came back and talked to me like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And then after that, John, who owned the Miss Barnegat Light, and he actually owns Viking Village. He owned Viking Village. He was partners with Lou Puskas, and they owned Viking Village. So they own the whole marina and everything. And his son, Eric, they have scallop boats. They had longline boats, tilefish boats. It was a big family, And so John was worried about me. So every half hour, he'd call me on the sideband. And then we got to a point where I could talk to him on the VHF. And he's like, I know, he goes, I know you're from Long Island, so you're used to shallow water and sandbars, he says, but I'm going to tell you how to come in this inlet. And you have to do exactly what I tell you. And you're not going to have any problem. But bear in mind, there's plenty of water. The way I'm going to tell you to go, you're not going to be short of water. Because, like along Long Island, those inlets there are horrible, too. Mm. There's no water. So I'm like still 2 miles out from the inlet. Now it's 4 o'clock in the morning. So he gets down on the by the lighthouse. There's picnic tables. He's down on the picnic table with a handheld VHF, and he's going to be looking for my lights. And it was horrendous out there. So I'm coming towards the inlet. He says, now you're about a mile off the inlet. He says, I want you to go north. About 2 miles north. So I'm going 2 miles north. And he says, turn around. And he says, you're going to put the red light behind the green light so the lights, I'm going to come towards the lights. Instead of coming in, straight in like this, I'm coming into them like this.
Mm-hmm.
you're putting the two lights from the inlet behind each other. So you went north, now you're coming south. And he says, when you get 75 feet from the rock pile, he says, just give it a lot of power and get right around that rock pile. And you're behind it, Well, the first attempt, I'm coming down and I'm looking on the side of me, and it looked like Hawaii 5-0 on the side of me. The waves were 20 foot and they were rolling. I was like, holy shit, look at that, So I'm heading that way. Next thing I know, I'm turning back out again. The wave just took and flipped me right around.
Oh, holy shit.
Like I was nothing. Now I'm going back out again. I give it the power. I come back in again. I make the second approach. I get up by the light. John's got the light. My mate's got the light on the rock pile. Bang, I get around and I'm in. Well, we go in and we come in and he tells us how to go all the way back down to Viking Village. We tie up and he's standing there on the dock with 2 cans of beer. So he says, come into my office. We're soaking wet too, by the way, because we broke out a couple of windows. It was a nightmare. So we give us 2 beers and we go into his office, a little tiny office. And he's got one of these old VCRs there, and he puts a VCR in there, and it comes on the screen. He says, look at this. He says, this is the propellers that I just bought for the Miss Barnegat light. This is 4:00 in the morning. I can't even, I'm sipping on this beer. I'm so
in shock.
Because of flying, I learned at a young age, because of flying, I think it was mainly because of flying and during my years growing up and being on the water all my life, you can never get, even though you think you might be at some point scared, you can never get scared. You can't, because it's your responsibility to get that boat home.
Right.
It's your responsibility to keep your hand on that throttle. So when you're there, and the one time I got a little nervous is when you could see the waves that afternoon, all afternoon, as big as they were, when you could see them and you can climb and come down, you didn't have a problem. But you've probably experienced this yourself. But when it's turning from light to dark, right at that point, when it turns from light to dark and you can no longer see the wave, but it's a big wall in front of you and the white water running off the top, now you can't see it. It's at one point where you just can't see it. So now you still keep your heading. I had the autopilot set. But when I was going down those things, the wheels were coming out of the water on the boat.
Wow.
I mean, it was like, and it's not it wasn't a small boat. So all I would do for all of that time was put my hand on the throttle. I would count the waves, 1, 2, 3, 4. The big one, as soon as that big one passed, and we went down that big one, I know I had 2 or 3 more waves, and I'd punch it up a little bit, like to get 2 knots or 2.5 knots to make a little headway before that 5th wave came. That's all I did. And I did most of it with my eyes closed. You couldn't see anything anyway, but I never, ever lost my composure, and that's one thing you learn with flying. You can't lose your composure, you crash if
That's
you do.
insane.
So when you answer the question about did you ever feel nervous, I could say, yeah, maybe at that one point I did feel nervous, but if you really know what you're doing and you really think that everything's okay, you didn't feel too nervous. But the time that I really felt nervous was after I was sitting there, me and John drinking them 2 cans of beer, talking to, his name was John Larson. Talking to John, he was showing us the propellers. They were like $80,000 or $90,000 a piece, and you could adjust them while you're going. They were these made in Norway things, and he's telling us and he's showing us, and I'm looking at John like, I just want to go to sleep. What the hell? This guy got us here looking at these propellers.
John, this isn't the time or the place to be showing me your new propellers.
Was he doing it to get your mind off the situation, or was he doing it because he thought you'd be interested in propellers?
He's doing it because he wanted to distract us.
Yeah.
And he knew what we were through. for
That
17, 18
is
hours.
insane.
That night, 4 guys drowned in Manasquan Inlet. That night.
Wow.
I listened to the whole thing on the radio.
Yeah.
I listened to the Coast Guard trying to rescue them. It was like a perfect storm kind of thing, So we go back to the boat. Now, bear in mind, I tied the boat up and I shut the engines off. And I just got off the boat because he was standing there with the 2 cans of beers, and I wanted to thank him,
Yeah.
I mean, and I was just being nice. So now bear in mind, we go back to the boat. We get on the boat. Neither one of us were down below in the boat for the whole time. Neither one of us were down inside the boat.
So you didn't even see what was happening down there.
No. When I opened up the doors and John and I went down there and we turned the lights on, it looked like a beaver was in the boat. And everything was piled up in the middle. Every cabinet, every countertop, everything was ripped apart.
Just
There was nothing. Everything was
huge beaver dam of stuff in the middle of.
Yeah. And I was like, where are you going to sleep? I don't know. He said, the bow looks pretty good. I'm going up there. I said, my bug's still okay. over here.
Holy
I
shit.
can get to it.
Oh my God.
So he goes up in the front. Pumps weren't running. I mean, pumps were no water anywhere. I knew we were okay. No lights were coming on. No pumps were running. The both of us fell asleep. Of course, John was down there this was 4:00 in the morning, like about 10 o'clock. You got to go over to this slip. He says, we got boats coming in to unload, So he knocked on anything. I wake up and the first thing I look at was the refrigerator. And I never noticed the night before. Well, I had a full-size refrigerator in that boat like you have in the house, top freezer and bottom. It was a full-size, like 34-inch or 36-inch wide. It held a lot. And on the top of it, there was about that much room that we used to keep all our bread up there, And the bread would stay up in there because it would be from the roof of the cabin. It would be about 8 inches. So there's plenty of room to put the bread up there, I looked at the refrigerator, and the refrigerator was pounded down a foot. The refrigerator was smashed a foot down.
Oh my God.
Freezer, it was actually all crunched down.
Just from hitting over.
From the deck, I guess, when the waves would hit coming up, and the water, that amount of blue water coming on the deck of the boat and flexing the deck down, and it was hitting the refrigerator and squashing the refrigerator. The refrigerator was totaled. I mean, I couldn't even open the freezer door.
Was your refrigerator bolted down?
It was bolted down. No, it wasn't bolted down, but it fit in. It was a tight fit. But what was happening is when the wave would flex the hull out and push it down, it was hitting it. And when the wave would push it up, it was hitting it, I never saw anything like it in my life. And it took John and I, we were there 3 days. We actually put everything back together again and bought a new refrigerator. And John, God bless the rest of his soul. He's gone now, but John was a great mate. He was an awesome mate. And he was a Vietnam hero. He had a purple heart and a Bronze Star from Vietnam. We fished back to Montauk. Actually caught some big eyes in the Hudson on our way back. Went into Montauk. He never got on a boat again.
Really?
John never got on another fishing boat again. And he told me when we got over, he says, I can't do this. I said, I understand, John. Because he was so shook up with that whole thing. He started painting. He became a house painter.
Wow.
In Montauk. But he never wanted to go on a boat again. I didn't realize that he must have been a lot. I was never busy to be scared, but he must have been a little scared,
Yeah.
Power of the ocean is incredible. That's for sure.
Yeah. the force of that blue water on that deck to do what it did. And I was thinking to myself, man, it's a good thing, because Greg did a lot on building that boat with me, and we were putting extra where the deck, we actually built the whole deck. I have pictures of us building that whole boat, but we not only really glassed it good where the deck met the hull, we also used a very hard density foam and insulate, and sprayed the whole inside of that boat was sprayed with a foam about an inch thick, but it was a structural foam.
Interesting.
And the thing held together. Like, I couldn't believe it held together the way it did, because that happens a lot of times. It happened a lot of times with those oceans where they would hit a wave and the bow would pop up.
Right.
And the water would go inside of them and sink them. They had a lot of them back in the 90s that sunk, those ocean yachts.
Yeah.
Swordfish boats. The hull split on them and all kinds of stuff. But that was probably my...
That's an insane story.
Maybe the title for this episode should be The Shrunken Refrigerator.
Oh, my God.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
I don't want to completely change the subject, but I definitely want to talk about some things before we get too far. So a couple of things. One story that I've heard through the grapevine that I would love for you to tell is catching giant bluefin on a lobster. Is this true? Did you actually catch it?
He's taking a sip of his coffee. He's warming up for this one.
I don't want to change the subject, but this is a very interesting story.
Well, yes, it's true. And we had stopped. There was myself in that same boat, by the way. And there was a boat next to me that was traveling with me, Robbie Knapp. He fishes here in Florida now on the West Coast. He kingfishes, but he had a longline boat over there, group of fishing for years. And he was well known up in giant tuna fishing. Robbie Knapp, NAPP. Robbie.
Heard of him.
Really good fisherman and really good giant tuna fisherman back in the day. Same category as most of the guys the good guys that were up there,
Yeah.
So Robbie, I met Robbie in the canal, and I had stopped there to get gas, fuel, and there was a little place there that sold lobsters. So I had grabbed like a half a dozen lobsters from them, and I had them in the live well. And I went to, and I went out, and we were going to go to Gloucester. And I said to Robbie, I said, I'm going to anchor here at the right off the corner of the Cape here and stay here for the night, get a good night's sleep, and then leave in the morning and go. He says, yeah, I'll stay with you too, So we pulled into an area. I didn't know what it was back then, but I found out later it's called the parking lot. And everybody knows it. It's just maybe it's right south of where you come out of the Cape Cod Canal.
Okay.
So I think the striped bass fishermen know it. It's called the parking lot. But when you mention that name to guys that fish a lot up there, they know the name of it. They know right where it is. So we're in I want to say 35 or 40 feet of water. And I had a tuna door. My tuna door on that boat was on the side. You pull it out, and usually you leave it out, It slipped in and out. The same as I had on the Midnight Sun. I built that one that way too. So I got up in the morning. It was hot and flat calm, and it was hot. I woke up I slept. I was tired. So I slept till, I want to say maybe it was 9:00, but the sun was already up pretty good. And I walked out to the door on the back deck to take a leak. And I'm taking a leak, and I'm looking over, and the water's crystal clear. And I see these great big black things moving around on the bottom. I said, the giant tuna. I said, holy shit, look at this. I don't remember who my mate was back then. But anyway, I didn't have anything to put down. So I put the lobster down on it with a rubber band. And the fish ate it right away. Bang. Like that. It was hooked up right there, 40 feet of water. Right there. And And that fish had all kinds of stuff in his stomach too, all kinds of little clams and all kinds of bottom stuff. They were rooting around the bottom there. It must be that they like doing that, you know.
That's so
If there's lobsters
strange.
there, they'll eat lobsters there. So I tried it in other places. George's, I put one down right on the cod grounds, just outside the cod grounds. We caught one on one there. Same thing. But you know, they eat anything they're lazy and they're pigs. They'll eat anything that'll go into their mouths.
As long as they're hungry.
Yeah, that's a true story.
That's amazing.
That's wild.
What other weird stuff have you found in fish's stomachs? I'm sure the list is endless, and I know we've already heard a few stories, but some other cool ones.
A wheel from a barbecue we found in one.
Like the little plastic grill wheels?
Yeah,
Really?
that's from like the old style barbecues.
Huh.
Maybe somebody threw it off their boat. I don't know what they thought it was to eat it, you know?
That's incredible.
I think that's like the weirdest thing that I ever saw.
That's a strange one.
Yeah. Never found a wheel.
No.
Found pieces of rope, poly,
bucket pieces,
bucket lid pieces. That seems to be a common one. We've asked that. We've asked that question to several guests, and like bucket lids has been a common one, which makes sense.
Yeah. Like a fluttering bait or something falling.
That's wild. What's your favorite bait to use for giant bluefin? If you had to pick one.
And again, that depends on where you are, right?
Yeah.
But if you had like the boat, you had to go anywhere to fish, and you can only pick one bait to bring with you, what would you pick?
Probably mackerel.
Yeah.
Mackerel.
Yeah.
They eat mackerel everywhere, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a pretty easy. I mean, you can fish it live, obviously, like any other live bait pretty easily, but you can rig them a million different ways. They're hydrodynamic.
Yeah.
They're versatile baits.
Or dead, they work so good as a stick bait too,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it depends. Like codfish is really good where codfish is good. Depends on where you are. Bluefish is awesome. They're all the greatest baits. So bluefish, I love fishing bluefish with kites. That's exciting,
Yeah, very exciting.
I'd say I'd have to pick.
I'm probably one of the only guys in Florida that uses the Boston big game kite here.
It is easy to fly.
It is.
Yeah, everybody's got these fancy $200 kites here in Florida, all different size winds and everything. That goddamn Boston big game kite, you can fly in any kind of wind, light, no matter what it is. It works great, We
brought a few of those up to Canada when we first started going up there, and they quickly became a big hit up there for their simplicity.
Yeah, no, everybody's got them.
Everyone fishes them there now.
And they're half the price of anything else. I mean,
yeah,
I've seen them online for $40,
Mm-hmm.
So you fish for giant bluefin, obviously up in Cape Cod, and I know you spent a lot of time in Nova Scotia and PEI and those waters. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Why you're up there? And
mostly Cape Breton Island. I didn't really go to PEI.
Yeah.
But because the PEI boats would come to Port Hood in the fall because the fishing there was even better than PEI. Now it's a little bit different because the way the herring boats are running and everything, I think it's pretty good for PEI, better now than it was. But back then they used to all come to Port Hood, when guys all travel to go to different places, the boats would all come into port and that would be the place to fish, But back in 93, they had our season was closed in October and their season was still going. And that's before they didn't have like restrictions, and they didn't have, what do they call it? Quota. They had a quota, but they didn't have like tags and everything like they have now. It was not regulated. If you caught, you could catch as many fish as you wanted if you could do it. because they couldn't close their quota. So there was about a half a dozen guys, American guys. We put our rods and reels in our trucks, and we went up there, brought all our equipment up there, basically to teach a lot of them guys how to catch them, because they would hook them, but they couldn't land them. And so it was a lot of fun because we were there, and they were excited that we were there to help them, because if they didn't close their quota that year, they were going to lose a fair amount of their quota to Japan, because Japan's always after everybody's quota, So that was the main reason why I went up there. And it was one of the best experiences I ever had in my life. I did it 3 years in a row because once you go and do it, you got to go back, just to be in a boat and have like 4 over 1,000-pound fish jump out of the water 10 feet away from the boat in the air. They're airing out just because they're chasing bait and they're coming up and they're airing out. And you look at these things. I've never seen anything like that in my life, but you do see it in Canada.
And you're right next to land.
And you're very close.
Yeah.
120 feet of water is like a mile and a half, 2 miles maybe from land. But yeah, it was a good experience there. And I used a lot of my knowledge and things that we talked about before, just to learn how to fish those places,
Yeah.
And it's all the same. It's just a little bit different. And it's funny because did I tell you guys the story about the Tignishes, which they have boats. If you fished up there, you might have seen they have a little sail on the back of the boat. They have like a little sail that's on the back. And they come from the western side of PEI.
Yeah, it's like the northwest tip is where Tignish is. And then for listeners, PEI is the northeast tip of the island. And then Port Hood is to the southeast of PEI by probably 40 miles. East, southeast, like 40 miles from the...
Yeah.
I think you meant to say North Lake is the northeast.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah. So most of the guys that came to Port Hood were from I think it's called Charlottetown. The guy that I fished with was from Charlottetown. He actually has a charter boat there, and he still fishes. His name is Ian. I'll think of it.
It's not Gauthier, is it?
Ian. That's not Thompson. Ian. Slipped my mind right now, but I'll think of it. Anyway, he had a little 31 Cape, they call them Cape Dories. It was like a fat little 31-foot boat that was a little cabin on it. Looked like a lobster boat. It was a crab boat. Actually, he did the crab traps, fish crab, those collapsible nets, crab traps. And so he had 2 rods and reels that were garbage. And so and he had no outriggers. And I was like, we got to do something about that, So I said, I don't care about the ones, we don't need them going out to the side, because his boat and those fish right there, you can fish 2 rods off the side. You just stagger them. One is right, because when those boats, the stern of those boats are really low to the water, and he had just put a new Cummins engine in it. But when the weight comes out of the back of that boat, it comes up over the transom going, you can reach out and touch the weight. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
really.
Squat down, and it comes up like this. So the squid rigs, you can just lay them out perfectly. So one you would keep like 10 foot behind the boat. That's how close. And then the second one you'd go out this side, you go maybe 60 feet. And then the third one, I'd like to put like 150 feet. So we went around, we found a mast from a sunfish. We found a mast from a sunfish, and then we found an aluminum pipe, and we mounted it into aluminum pipe. And he had a pipe that went up on that, and we lashed it to that. And so you just set it up. You'd put the rig out, you put the rubber band on it, and you'd pull it up, with a rubber band on it. There was no clip or anything. Rubber band would just break when the fish hit. But we had that pole up about like 25 feet right up the middle. So it would hold that third one way the hell out.
Yeah.
And up high, the line would be out of the water. Because what you wanted to do back then was you wanted to keep the bar out of the water. So the only thing that was in the water was the squid. So if you had it up high enough, you could keep the bar out.
Yeah.
Well, after I lost 5 fish up there because I set the same amount of drag that we used to do here, but I never realized that the fish they're all 800 to 1,500 pound fish.
It's crazy what those big fish will do to a spreader bar.
Oh yeah. So after breaking off 5 fish, I said, we have to reorganize this whole thing. I thought maybe something was wrong. There was a weak spot in the line because I just brought my squids that I use up there with me. So I said, we got to redo all of this stuff. So I went and we went to 600 pound main line on the spreader bar. And then what I did was I put 200 pound mono, 200 pound Dacron on each side of the bar, coming up to the middle. So I made a harness, and then I had attached with 30 pound test mono to the clip.
Yeah.
So what would happen is when those fish hit up there, when you put that rig out there that's set up I use 17 squids on it, the big ones, like the 13-inch ones, 14-inch ones. I might even been bigger than that. The big old ones we
the 17s. There's 13s and 17s, I believe.
Yeah, they were the 17s, and then we used to put cut plastic cups and put them inside of them, to keep them round. And anyway, when the fish would hit that, like the ones that they would take off and run, and the ones that I'd break off, when I got them back after the fish was broken off, every one of those squids on the main line would turn inside out.
Just
you picture what I'm saying?
force.
Instead of them being on here like
right.
going backwards, they would turn inside out.
Yeah.
And then I realized, holy shit, these fish don't fool around. They're big, and in this 54-degree water. They have unbelievable amount of power. So we went to the 600 pound main line, and then I came up with this idea for the breakaway bar. So what would happen is that as soon as that fish hit and took off, it would break the 30 pound test on the bar, and the bar would slide up the line. So, and then what you do is when you're fighting the fish and you get that, it comes right up to the line. You take a knife and you just cut the Dacron off and throw it in the boat.
Yeah.
Now you're only fishing on a straight daisy chain.
Right.
So, and that was all turned inside out too. So what we ended up doing was I went to the 600 pound test, and then you would watch for the bite. So we had it set at 70 pounds because the squid rig, you couldn't even, you at 30 pounds, it would keep wanting to go out, So you'd have it set at 70 pounds, and as soon as you saw that fish hit, you let it go for like a second or two, but as long as it would take you to get to that reel, and then back it down to 30. Take the strain off of him because he's already pulling all that shit backwards,
Right.
And then those boats there, you got to fish it almost like, who really is good at that is the boat that Jay fishes on. He always fishes them right off the side of the boat so he can go in a circle like this.
Yep.
What's his name?
Hard March.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the way you fish them up there. The rod holder's on the side, and those boats just can make a tight turn like this. So instead of like fishing them off the stern or whatever, you can fish them right off the side. But the thing is, you chase them down first to try and get line back on the reel, because those big fish will take off. They'll go like crazy. And chase them down a little bit and get some line back on the reel, and then get them to settle down and straight up and down, and you can get them, But it was exciting fishing, real exciting.
And that combined with the people up there, the landscape, I mean, it's just a truly special place.
It is. Cape Breton Island is like, did you guys go to Port Hood? Did you get to Cape Breton Island?
We offloaded there once. We haven't hung out there just because of, the Bruces who we fish with are based out of PEI, but we've fished off of Port Hood many times. We've offloaded there. We're familiar with it.
Yeah. Did I tell you about how I mapped that place out? I think I already.
I love
A little
this.
bit. You should tell
need
the story,
to share this because it's relatable. We've done similar things for the Bay just to kind of, keep things a little bit more secret. But I love some of your nicknames for spots, so definitely share that.
Yeah, that was neat. I mean, like, if you what's neat is that you can carry the mountains down into the ocean, and a lot of people don't realize. Like, you were at Cape Breton Island, so Port Hood is an inlet that goes in, and then if you look at Mabu Harbor, which is the next one to the north of that, there's two big mountains that are 2,000 feet that come down into a valley. But what you realize is when you do that is that valley goes all the way out into the ocean, like maybe, I don't know how far it goes out, but let's say it goes 6 or 8 miles out. So the valley continues just like you see it on land. It's in the water. It's the same thing. So that's a natural place to fish, because if there's a valley there, and that's where everybody lives and all the restaurants are there, so that's where you're going to go. Well, it's the same for the fish. Down here is a valley, and all the bait's going to be in the valley because it hides during the day. So, I mean, you figure out pretty quick where all of those places are to fish, It's pretty neat, actually. But to name the different places, we had rented a house. There was all the natives there know one place. It's called the Red Barn. And we had rented a double wide up there. I think Charlie, we were on one side. Remember Charlie Dodge?
Dodge.
He's from
sounds really familiar.
He's from Chatham.
Yeah.
He was in the other half of that. We never saw each other because you'd get up at 4:00 in the morning to go fishing, and you'd be so tired when you got back at night. You went to sleep, and you got up the next morning at 4:00. You were gone again.
Yep.
Never got to see anybody. So we rented this, and it was on just above the Red Barn. So when we made up our chart, we called that Archie's house instead of the Red Barn. So all the guys knew. When I said we're catching them off of Archie's house, they knew it was the Red Barn, but nobody else knew it, But it was the same thing. We changed all the names of the common names to our own names and made up our own little chart. But it was pretty neat to do that,
That is cool.
That's funny.
That is cool. That's so incredible. If I'm able to do a fraction of what you have done in your fishing career thus far, I'll consider it a successful one.
We haven't even gone it.
No, we've 5 hours. We've scratched the surface. We could spend 5 hours just talking about fishing in Nova Scotia. It's pretty incredible.
You're getting there,
Yeah, that's what's so fun about this journey is just building that resume.
I wish you would have had the opportunity in Port Hood to go to one of the only 2 restaurants that are there. I don't know what's there today, because I'm talking about 90, 93, 94, 95, 96. I don't know what's there today. I don't know how much has changed. But there was 2 restaurants. I had 2 bars in them, and that's all it was. And it was the worst food you could ever have. I think I told you this story, but you'd go to the one and you'd order the steak, or you'd order the Delmonico steak's big up there. They call it Delmonico steak. It's I don't know what the hell it really was. The food, like the maybe the corn was okay that went with it, but it was like the worst, And then you go to the place the next night, and you'd have something there that might have been like the meatloaf might have been just a little tiny bit better than the other place, but they were both bad. And when you're out fishing, you leave at 4:00 in the morning, you come in and it's with a fish, like say 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You're already out there 12 hours. You're tired. You get the fish off the boat, and you're like, which one of these places are we going to go and eat? There's no shopping to really go anywhere to get anything to even cook. And you don't want to cook because you're so goddamn tired. So you're going to go to one of these 2 places, and one's worse than the other, But it got to a point where they were both really, really bad, but you would make it up in your mind on your way in the inlet that I think that one's going to be better tonight. until you go there and have the meal and say, no.
It's still bad. I know it's still bad. Oh, that's priceless. I will say, we have lucked out. It is similar up where we are anyway. Not many restaurants. The food quality sounds better than what you experience. It's very, very good. The potatoes, I don't care what potato product you eat up there, it's delicious. Yeah. Again, it's just a cool place. But love going back there year to year.
What was they get? They had those machines at all the places up there. You played with loonies. Was it loonies?
Loonies and toonies.
Loonies. You put in the machine. You get them, and it was like a one-arm banded machine that you played. They had a lot of them in those places. I don't know if they still have that today. Do they?
I haven't seen one. I'll have to keep an eye out next time I'm up there, but I haven't seen one.
It's like a one-arm bandit, but you play with. You got to use the loonies. They sell you the loonies, and you got to use them.
Gotcha.
I guess. Yeah, that was always a fun thing to do. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That's great. So I know we've jumped around a lot. We've told a lot of stories. You've shared some incredible knowledge with us here, and we can't thank you enough. Before we wrap it up, just kind of one last little conversation. Seeing as you have so much experience under your belt offshore and as a captain, as a mate, for our generation or younger, what advice or words of wisdom do you have for the younger generation getting into offshore fishing, for kind of getting to your level, getting to that experience level, and making the most out of their fishing career? Like, are there certain traits that you really think you need to have, other than obviously staying composed in scary situations and things like that? But what just general advice do you have for young mates and captains out there that are developing as fishermen?
You can take a time too.
That's really hard to like explain, because when you've had as many hours and as much time and a good part of your life on the ocean like that, you do want to, and you guys are experiences it too, but it's good that you're doing things like this and diversifying. But you when you're 80 years old and guys ask you to go fishing with them, and when you've spent as many days and time and hours on the boat of your life put into that, when you get older, you think twice about it. Like, should I have done other things? Should I have done, maybe diversify my time a little bit more? But I did. In a lot of ways, I did so many things in my lifetime. It's like, sort of, I can't even believe it. One of my friends said to me, if they had to have a tombstone with everything you've done on it, it would be as big as the Empire State Building.
I'd say that's a true fact statement right there.
But I think one of the things is that you do have to, because when you get older, you think back. I spent so much time on the ocean. Did I really miss this or that? But it's really the old saying: you're not going to catch a fish at the dock. So it's a matter of, for the younger people, you got to go. And the cycles of the fishing now is as good as it was in the 70s and the 60s and 70s and 80s. And you get ups and downs, you get different times when different things happen for different reasons. But the future of the fishing, to me, is actually brighter today than I felt that it was some years ago, because when we had all the foreign fishing vessels fishing on our waters, they were really cleaning out our bait. They were cleaning out when you have an interruption in the food chain, that screws everything up. But if the food chain is good, that's why, like, I think the offshore canyon fishing is going to always be strong. I think the inshore fishing with these proposals for these windmills and everything that's going on today is disgraceful. of what this government is doing with these leases, with this land and everything. I mean, I think that's the worst thing that they could possibly do to our oceans. I saw all the leases when I was up there at that booth at Damon's, and I was shocked because I never realized what the potential was and what they actually leased out to all these foreign countries. And then I found out they just leased out $4-something billion worth of them off of Long Island. I mean, and they're leasing these all out with the intentions of, I believe, destroying a good part of our fertile fishing grounds. You don't think it, I know, and somehow, their attitude is, oh, that'll make it better, No, it's not going to make it better.
No,
It's
agreed.
just going to hurt it tremendously,
It's going to mess up migration patterns. It's going to do
Exactly
a lot of damage to, mammals and marine mammals. It's really terrible, honestly.
I don't believe, I don't know if you guys like that or not, but I don't really believe that much in climate change itself, because I think this world is going to maintain itself. It's going to clean itself. It's going to survive, because it has been for millions of years. And the thing about it is even like the rising tides, I don't see that. But they're talking about a rising an inch in 100 years. I still don't see the effect of that. But a lot of the things that have been done have been good in a lot of ways. But a lot of the things that are proposed to be green and good are not. So
I agree.
But there's so many diversified things with that. Where people, you can go on and on and on with discussions about it. But I don't believe. I think that by doing certain things, you can protect the fishery, but you can't go overboard with it. Like the 200-mile limit was good, because what it did was it saved, so the groundfish could come back. So but then they do other stupid things like up where you guys are. I mean, Doug Langley, I just saw a thing with him flying over. I've never seen so many seals in my life. That's out there on Chatham right now, and it's like incredible. He just flew over there. Was on Facebook or something last week.
It was thousands of seals.
Thousands, yeah. And they're eating lobster, they're eating flounder, they're eating everything. They're eating everything, and they should have never stopped that, because the environmentalists are, oh no, we can't kill them anymore, because you can't have a sealskin coat anymore. You can't have, this is all like wrong, So but that what they do is they established something like the windmills that actually create the reverse effect, because you're saving the seals, but you're killing all the groundfish. You're killing everything else. You're bringing, and then they complain about all the great white sauce. Well, of course they're going to come in. That's what they eat them.
Yeah, it's a massive food source.
Yeah. So, but I think the future is bright. But I think, like, when you get back to fishing, I think that if you're going to do it commercially is one thing. You have to really, really work at it hard to do it. You have to follow the migration if you really, if you really are going to do it, for like commercial, you've got to go where the fish are. Wherever they are, that's where you got to go. And then that's what you're going to do. But it's not an easy thing to do. Commercial fishing is a very, very hard job. For any part of it is a very hard job. Long hours, and a lot of times, because of the way the markets are and whatnot, you don't always get the best prices either. And, so that is always a problem. The quality of the fish, the price you get, the market. You would think now with everything going up, the swordfish would be really worth more. Well, actually, they are a little bit. Day-boat caught swordfish in Florida are worth, up around $8 to $10 a pound. But, like, boat comes in with 100,000 pounds of fish from Grand Banks, and they get like $3-4 for it. that's a lot of work. Even though if you come in with 100,000 pounds, it's still a good paycheck, you know.
Yeah.
But there's very few boats even fishing the Grand Banks anymore. It's a handful of boats fishing. American boats, I think there may be, if there's a dozen, I'd be surprised. More probably like 6 or 7. And it's the most fertile grounds, the most best fishing grounds in the whole world right there. Not only for swordfish, for bluefin tuna, and they don't even count those fish that are out there. There's acres and acres and acres of bluefin tunas out there that the Japanese come in after they come in and they target them because it's international waters. They can, and if they have a quota, they'll take them.
Yeah.
But the American boats are not allowed. They have to use 18-0 circle hooks, breakaway, a breakable hook. So what does that do? That doesn't allow them to catch big eyes on the Grand Banks anymore. I think they just passed those regulations for the Canadians now because I heard somebody had say that they had to go to the same hook now as the Americans used. It was very unfair back when we were doing the show because a Canadian boat right next to us would have 200 big eyes, maybe 40 swordfish and then 200 big eyes all in the same set because they were allowed to use a 10-0 or 11-0 J hook. And we weren't allowed to. We could only use a circle hook. So you're not going to get the big eyes on the big circle hook like that. It's too big, You might get some, but you couldn't catch as many.
It's interesting to me that they would make that size requirement, like, obviously 12-0, depending on the manufacturer, it could be slightly different hook to hook. But in our experience, the smaller circle hooks tend to get the better connection than a, big 12-0, truly like 180 tip to shank circle hook. I feel like your placement's better with the smaller hooks.
Yeah, it probably is, I know on like a bluefin, when you're using a bluefish, I used to use 12-0 on a bluefish, never had a problem, never pulled the hook.
Yeah.
I want to say when I fished with Greg, in 3 years, we pulled one hook in 3 years. Wow. We did everything we hooked. We had a good percentage. But I always used 12-0 triple strength. I got even in a mackerel, stick mackerel, nothing live bait. Live bait, we had to go to those little hooks,
Yeah.
But I always used a big hook and never had a problem with it on a bluefin.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
But the offset 10-0 and 11-0 always worked good on big eyes, though, when you were long lining years ago, when you were allowed to use them. They were the best.
Just from like a bait presentation standpoint or connection standpoint?
No, just this the amount of hookups you'd get, you get better hookups with the offset hook.
Gotcha. I got one more rapid fire question for you before we do our outro here. We have a lot of canyon fishermen that listen to this, trolling, sword fishing, the whole gamut. If you were to pick one canyon to fish, you could only fish one canyon for the rest of your life, what canyon would it be?
That's a tough one.
If the water was prime in every canyon, which canyon would you pick?
I don't know. I always like the fishtails.
Wow.
Interesting choice.
I always like the fishtails. I like West Atlantis. My problem is that I fished every one of them, and some of them are better than the other. Gilbert and Munson, all the way to the Canadian line. And what's the one that splits the Canadian line? That was even a better one.
Corsair?
Yeah.
Corsair?
One, yeah. When in 2014, had the opportunity to fish starting at the point off of North Carolina. It might have been 2015. It was 2015, I think. So I made up my mind that I was going to. I fished when I had back in the 90s when I had the Midnight Sun longline boat. Plus, I had my boat, the Sea Hunter, and I had another longline boat called the Midnight Express. And the Midnight Sun carried a lot of fuel, 12,000 gallons, because we actually made the front water tank, the bottom front water tank, into a fuel tank. So he'd be fishing. I'd know where he was going, and then he would tell me where he'd be at certain days. So I took John. Actually, John was with me on this. This was before it might have been the year before the disaster trip going into Barnegat Light, but John was with me. And we went and we fished. I have somewhere around here a pillowcase that I wrote on the pillowcase with a magic marker of all the fish we caught, like a flag made out of a pillowcase.
Yep.
So we started in the Hudson, and we fished all the way to the Canadian line.
Oh my God!
Every canyon, and I have to find that. If I can find it, I'll tell you how many big eyes we caught, because that boat would hold 10,000 pounds. But we filled the boat. But Cruz would meet me with the other boat. He would fuel me up because I carried 1,000 gallons. I carried 6 and 6 is 12, and then I had a 300. No, 3 and 3 is 6, and then I had a 300. I carried 900 gallons of fuel.
Yeah,
which is I could go and burn, trolling and stuff, because that's what I was doing, mostly trolling, maybe under 100 gallons a day, 24 hours. So I could go, a few days, but he would meet me and fuel me up, and then I would keep on going. And he was fishing, but I'd always know that I'd always be close to where he was. So I had the opportunity to hit every one of those canyons, every single one of them,
awesome.
And spend a lot of time. And what I was starting to say was I had an opportunity in 2014 or 15, one of those 2 years, to do the same thing. But what I did was I did it a little bit different. I was teaching somebody. So what I did was I made a drawing of each canyon. So in the Baltimore Canyon, in the northeast corner of the Baltimore Canyon, there's one notch in there. You want to be there. You want to be in that notch there at 6 o'clock at night. Between 6 and dark, that's where you want to be, And so you get to know that spot is where you're going to be. Like if you want yellowfins, you're going to be on the other side up on the bank, But whenever you could be fishing all different parts of that canyon, but you want to be at a certain time of night in that little niche of that canyon. And all the other boats that know it, all of a sudden they'll show up there too. All of a sudden you'll see people you don't hold, like guys like Mark de Blasio, guys that know those canyons that fish them,
Yep.
They'll show up there and say, "Oh shit, he's here,"
So you picked each, hot spot in each canyon.
Yeah, and you get to know, where Big Eye Mountain is in the fishtails, and what time the fish are going to come up there, and when you come off the bank, you're going to get hit, and that's a whole nother thing. And then trolling for big eyes at night, we did it for a long time, and that only became a popular thing on the last half dozen years, But shit, big eye fishing at night trolling at night was the best, Even greensticking at night, I would put the underwater lights on my stick, like on my main stick line. I'd put like a half a dozen all the way out, like wherever there was a hook, because you didn't know if you had a fish on or not until the light went down to the water. Then you knew you had a fish on, because you could get you don't usually use 200-pound breakaway on a green stick, so you don't usually break away until you get at least 3 or 4 fish on. So you could be dragging around a 80-pound yellowfin for hours and not know he's there. But it didn't break the breakaway, you know. But yeah, the canyon. It's so hard to say, but you know, if you ever have the opportunity, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to do that, to go to each canyon and figure out, not only because of knowledge that I had before, but looking at the canyon on the chart and studying it, and I also had that kind of, even on my Sea Hunter, I was way ahead. I had the technology to, I had the old, before they even used them, where it actually drew the picture of it. You know, when you flip it on to that mode, it showed you the edges where they all come down and everything, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know, like I'm in the canyon with Tommy. We know where we have to be. When him and his dad were fishing, we knew where we had to be at a certain time of the night, you know. If you were in hydrographers, you know where you had to be, you know, when the big guys were going to hit, you knew where they were going to be, you know, or where they should be. So you got a better chance, you know. And the current's always running out there, you know, to the east. The eddies are moving to the east. So you're always, like, in the evening time, a lot of times you want to be up on that northwest corner, you know. You want to be up where the bait's coming off the bank. That's where you want to be fishing, you know, up, like coming up the bank to the west in the evening.
So much knowledge.
How many more days you have to talk about this stuff? Because I could go all. Unfortunately,
you're gonna have to get that pillowcase, put a pillow in it, and we have to spend some.
Oh my god,
some more time talking here.
I can nerd out to this forever.
I know I have that somewhere. I don't know where the hell it is though, but I would never throw it away, because I actually drew swordfish, and I put how many swordfish we have. I drew big eyes, how many big eyes we had. It was something like how many yellowfins we had, how many mahi we had, and how many blue marlin. I think we had 11 blue marlin.
Holy shit.
How many days were you out?
We were 11 days.
Wow.
Straight, you know, 24 hours a day for 11 days.
So cool. Averaging a blue marlin a day.
That's insane.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Absolutely wild. Well, Archie, believe it or not, we've been going for over 2 hours here.
Have we?
Yeah, it's insane.
Time flies when you're having fun, that's for sure. But we just want to say thank you. Huge thanks. You know, obviously we have known you and your sons and your whole family through the grapevine, just through the fishing community. We had the pleasure of meeting you at Castafari and shared some stories and heard your presentations, and having a person and resource like you at our disposal and now our listeners' disposal is a pretty incredible thing. So we thank you for coming on and sharing a small piece of your experience with us to you know, help develop some younger fishermen and keep everyone in good spirits through the early spring and end of winter time here. So again, thank you, and we really appreciate it, and hopefully we get to fish together someday, and we'll definitely do another one of these, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I definitely do like to share my knowledge, because I think that it's something that, you know, when I go, it's going to go with me. And a lot of the younger guys, it's good for them to know some of the things that I learned over the years, you know, because it's just the one thing that I get to, though, is like, with all the hours that you do spend on the ocean, think about like the hours that are precious on land with family and everything too.
Yeah.
Because you can lose track of that a little bit. And then when you get older, think back like, should I have spent a little more time here or spent a little more time there, or should I did this or did that, you know? But you can't have any regrets. But, you know, I do like to share. And there's so many people that I run in today that I've shared things with, even way back. One fella's now, he's like an admiral in the Coast Guard, and him and his father were fishing in Montauk, and we came in with like a 600-pound bluefin, from the butterfish hole, and he fished 3 days straight with his dad. And they were sitting at the picnic table, and I went over and I sat down and I talked to him. I told him, do this, do this, do this. I explained everything to him. They went out next day, and they caught a 400-pounder, the first fish they ever caught. To this day, the guy is a high up in the Coast Guard guy. He's like, he just thinks the world of me, because who would take the time to sit down? And him and his dad had the best day of their life.
Right.
Because I took a few minutes of my time to tell him, you do it like this. It's not that hard to do it. You got to have patience, and you got to, do it this way, rig it this way, and they caught the fish. And he never forgot it. I keep in touch with him today. He was in Miami in the Coast Guard. He was all over the United States in the Coast Guard, mostly East Coast, but he always keeps in touch with me,
That's awesome. It's great.
So, and he was like 13 or 14 years old. And he's probably in his 50s now,
Yeah, so cool. Get to meet a lot of cool people through this industry.
You do.
It's awesome.
It's true.
Yeah. So cool. Well,
and it happens right here. It's right here too. I love to see people come in. Even my canal. Like they didn't know how to catch permit here. They didn't know how to catch the crabs. Get the blue core crabs. You got to go down to Gentle Beach Causeway at night. Get your crabs, long handle net. Bring them back. You got to keep them in a special trap so you can't have them in anything, because then the sheep's head will eat their legs off, and then you go out and catch a 40-pound permit. And like it's one of the best fisheries we have right here for fun fishing, but a lot of people don't know how to do it. They see a picture of a permit. How the hell do you do that? How do you catch them? It's the same. Snapper fish and everything else it's the same. It's all just doing it and getting the knowledge to learn how to do it.
Yeah. No, it's
Timmy Palmer, who was on the sword show with me, who I took with me when Linda asked me to do the Swords Life on the Line, lives right down the road from me here, and he actually has the old Hubris, which they redid, and it's called the East Wind now, the boat, and he runs that for a dermatologist here in town. And they put on, it's a $500,000 machine that maps the bottoms. But actually, if he's going out the inlet, and if there was a bicycle laying on the bottom, it shows you the bicycle.
No way, that's amazing.
That's wild.
So, and not only that, this sonar that he has is so high tech that he can be going along and see a red spot a quarter of a mile away, and go to that red spot, and it's a rock pile on the bottom. Pull up to it. It's not on any charts or anything. Drop a rig down with 5 hooks on it, and pull up 5 groupers, one on every hook. He has found so many. Even up north, he's found things. But they just. That kind of equipment that's available today, if you have the money to buy it, it's just like phenomenal.
It really is.
You saw the way this thing marks. Snowy groupers. Pull up 5 50-pound snowy groupers, 5 of them on a little spot as big as a dining room table that nobody would be able to even find on a boat.
Right.
And he's got a stabilizer on, one of those.
The Seakeepers.
Seakeeper on the boat. So he pull up and he tells the guys, drop the lines, and they drop the lines. They have a snapper group of permit, commercial permit. So they're allowed to fish and keep, a lot of these fish, but they do it because they give a lot of the fish away to clients and stuff like that, but it's just phenomenal to watch what Tim does with this, And it's mind-boggling to see the fish that he can catch with this machine.
The new tech
and the technology that they have, to find a little spot like that. I mean, you'd have to, and that's different than my fishing. That's even more advanced. I love to see it, but that's even way more advanced than me.
Yeah. No, the technology's come a long way. Even like the more recreational, like focused technology and stuff. It's insane. You know, going to the, you know, we've grown up fishing the Stellwagen our whole lives, and the upgrades in technology and fishing same spots and just gaining more knowledge for those spots just because of it is pretty wild.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Really is.
And you guys have done well, you know. And what you're doing, the knowledgeable things that you're doing with the podcasts and with speaking at Damien's seminars. I thought that seminar was phenomenal for a lot of those guys. And there were young guys there, but there were also a lot of old guys there too.
Yeah.
It was a whole mixture of people, you know.
Right.
Guys that knew what they were doing wanted to learn more, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
It's good to see.
I couldn't believe some of the people that come up to talk to me about some of the stuff that I talked about, you know. It was like, it was really a nice experience for me to go up there and do that. I enjoyed it. You know, lucky I was right next to you guys.
I know.
Yeah, it was perfect.
It worked out great.
It was great. It was great. A lot of laughs, a lot of stories. We appreciated every minute of it. So it was awesome.
I only feel bad I didn't take a picture with the two of you. I have pictures with me with Mark and Tommy. I have no picture with you guys.
Oh, we're gonna have to make that happen.
You'll have to scrimshot on a Swordfish, Bill.
I can do that.
Well, we're gonna.
Well, should I do it with the headsets on?
Perfect. This is exactly how I saw them last.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
that would be funny though.
It would be funny. It would be funny. So again, thank you so much. Really appreciate this, and we'll definitely do this again. So we're just going to end it here quickly on our father's 3 words of fishing wisdom. Remember, you can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last one, you'll just have to keep listening. Stay tight, everybody. Thank you so much, Archie. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much for tuning in to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast. If you would like more information about today's guest, our episode, and show sponsors, or if you want to order hats and apparel, please visit our website at SeaBrosFishing.com. You can also stay up to date on all the latest SeaBros Fishing content and podcast episodes by following us on Instagram at SeaBros Fishing. Finally, to book a trip with us through our family-run charter fishing company, please visit MassBayGuides.com or see our latest updates and fishing reports by following Mass Bay Guides on Instagram and Facebook.